Hello Nidorinas and Nidorinos, I'm KingNido, and today it is the Turrfield Ebonies going up against the Olivine Raiders. And as these two sides have a look at their opening hands, let's have a look at this tale of the tape between these two teams, where for the Turrfield Ebonies, they're currently in 9th place, and they have never missed out on a victory road, and they do not want to miss out for the first time here in Season A3, whereas for the Raiders, they're sitting in 5th place, holding on to that last victory road spot, and they do not want to let go. So with that said, let us know in the comments below who you think is going to win this matchup. Will it be the grass decks? Will it be the metal decks? Let's go!
3, 2, 1, go!
And starting off this matchup, it is going to be the Pharaoh Seed from that Super Burst Impact deck of the Olivine Raiders going up against the Rowlet from the Leaf Charge deck of the Turrfield Ebonies. They've got the Leafage Rowlet in the active spot. They've got the Skill Dive Rowlet on the bench here, but here we go in our game 1 in our 3-game series. It is a potion being pulled by the Olivine Raiders, and we can see that they've already got the Ferrothorn in hand. It does require 3 energy to get online, but they are going to get a Poison Barb here onto the Pharaoh Seed. They want to deter the Ebonies from going on the offensive with this Leaf Charge deck, but they are having a look at their hand as well. They've got the X-Speed and the Repel, as the Decidueye has been pulled for the Ebonies. No rare candy in hand, and they can't get that evolution online just yet, but they are going to get the energy onto the Rowlet. They've got their own Poison Barb, and they're still going to go on the offensive, immediately getting that 20 damage with the Leafage onto the Pharaoh Seed. But now Rowlet has to deal with that poisoning as well, as it is going to be the Alolan Dugtrio being pulled here for the Raiders. They get a first of 2 required energy onto the Pharaoh Seed, and they are going to play the potion, so they will immediately offset the damage that Rowlet put onto Pharaoh Seed. So it's actually Rowlet who's taken more damage overall from that Leafage at this point in the game. But as we said, this is a 3-game series. All 3 games count towards the leaderboard, so it's not just a best of 3, although you do want to win majority of the games, but each game is worth 2 points. As the Ferrothorn is online, it is the Professor's Research being played for the Ebonies. They get the Kartana, they also get that Leaf Cape that we will only see on the side of the Turrfield Ebonies, and Kartana is brought onto the bench, only requiring 1 energy, but they choose to go with that benched Rowlet, receiving its first energy here. They're having a look at the Ferrothorn. It still requires 2 more energy, and they are thinking of getting that Leaf Cape onto the active Rowlet here. They're trying to offset some of that damage clearly from the poisoning. They're probably still waiting out for a rare candy. They do have the Dartrix inside this deck as well, but they continue with the Leafage, chipping away at the Ferrothorn. But with those Steel Spikes, it's going to do 20 damage back to the Rowlet, and there's that Poison Barb again. It is going to ensure that this Rowlet stays poisoned, immediately taking all the damage that that Leaf Cape would have offset, as it is the Pokeball being played that the Raiders just pulled. They get the Alolan Diglett immediately going on to the bench in preparation for that Dugtrio undoubtedly, but they do get a second energy onto the Ferrothorn. Rowlet has 30 health left, but they've pulled the rare candy, have the Ebonies. They can get the Decidueye immediately online here, and they're going to get it onto that active Rowlet. Oh, sorry, it looks like they were, but I am mistaken. They can go for the bench Rowlet if they so choose. And looks like that's what they're going to do, and as that active Rowlet only has a 1 energy retreat cost, they can keep it out of that discard zone, but instead they're going to put an energy onto the Kartana, moving the Kartana into the active spot. This does cure a Rowlet of that poisoning. They get the Poison Barb onto the Kartana. It only has 60 health. It cannot outlast a hit from the Ferrothorn, but they get the Thrash Metal here onto the Ferrothorn, bringing its health down to 50. There is that 20 recoil damage from those Steel Spikes of Ferrothorn. You have to wonder, are the Ebonies prepping this Ferrothorn for being in discard range from the Decidueye, as the Raiders have just pulled their own Professor's Research? They play that immediately, they get the Magina, and they get the Guzma. That can cause the Poison Barb to be discarded from Kartana, but they cannot play it as they just played the Professor's Research, and it is 1 supporter card per turn. The Magina is online, so is that Alolan Dugtrio here. And the Raiders now thinking about where they want to move this energy, but Ferrothorn still requires 1 more. However, they've gone with the Dugtrio receiving an energy. You have to wonder, is that a mistake here from the Olivine Raiders? Because they easily could have wiped the Kartana off the board. The Lily has been pulled for the Ebonies. She can restore this supporter card 60 health from a Stage 2 Pokemon. And speaking of Stage 2 Pokemon, the Decidueye is in the active spot with this sniping arrow. It can target any Pokemon on the side of this Super Burst Impact deck, and they've got the Ferrothorn off the board. There's those Steel Spikes though coming into play, 20 damage onto the Decidueye. We can't help but wonder though, why did they not target down that Kartana with the Ferrothorn here, as it is the Ebonies taking the first point here in game 1. The Alolan Dugtrio being moved into the active spot. With that Iron Head, it can do 70 damage for every coin flip it gets a heads, and the way it works is it starts, and as soon as it hits the tails, it stops, so it can stop immediately as the Guzma is played from the Raiders, and with that Leaf Cape discarded from the Rowlet on the bench, it is discarded from the field, and the Raiders have just snuck in their first point. A very clever play there from the Olivine Raiders, as they are going for these coin flips, and immediately they get the tails, and this cuts off that Iron Head straight away. So this Decidueye is going to take 0 damage from the Alolan Dugtrio, but it still takes that damage from the poisoning, as they do pull the leftovers here, another Pokemon tool that they can get into play, and they are going to put it onto the Decidueye. Now Decidueye will restore 10 health at the end of every turn that the Ebonies have, not in between each side. With that in play, they've also got the Lusamine and the Beastite there in hand, as they get a third energy here onto the Decidueye. It does have a 3 energy retreat cost. They could be prepping it for a retreat, as Kartana only requires 1 energy to get online with that Thrash Metal. And they do restore 40 health from the Decidueye with the Lily here, and here it is, the Sniping Arrow, 70 damage onto the Alolan Dugtrio, bringing it down to 20 health. There's that Poisoning doing 10 damage to the Decidueye. A second Ferrothorn being pulled for the Raiders. They get their second Magearna though onto the bench, starting to set up one of them here with its first of 2 energy. They're going for another Iron Head. They need to flip these consecutive heads. They get 1. They get 2, they get 3, 210 damage. Decidueye is absolutely discarded from the board here, as the Raiders have just taken their second point with those 3 impressive coin flips. The amount of damage that that Iron Head can do is off the charts, as the Ebonies have just pulled a Pokeball. They are going to play that, so they're going to get a basic Pokemon, and it is the Pheromosa, who can do, with those Jump Blues, 20 damage to the active Pokemon, but also 20 damage to a benched Pokemon. And they did take their time putting it onto their bench. They're probably looking at the field of play here. They've got the 2 Magearnas opposing them on the bench of the Raiders here, but they're going to play the Lusamine as well. They're going to get the 2 energy onto the Pheromosa from their discard pile, and they get an energy onto the Kartana, who only has 20 health remaining, so they're going to retreat it here. Pheromosa being moved into the active, so it still has 70 health remaining. They can discard the Dugtrio here. It only has 20 health remaining, and then they'll need to choose which Magearna they want to target down. You have to think they will target down the one that has energy currently on it, but here we go with the Jump Blues from the Pheromosa, targeting the Dugtrio and that Magearna with the energy here in play. Both teams needing 1 more point to take our game 1 in our 3-game series. And it is the Magearna with that energy being moved into the active spot. A second Alolan Diglett being pulled for the Raiders, immediately moved on to the bench. They've got the Repel and the X-Speed still in hand as well, and they're going to play the Repel. This is going to cause that Kartana to be moved back into the active spot, and with the Silver Cannon, the Raiders and this Super Burst Impact deck are going to take game 1 over the Turrfield Ebonies Leaf Charge deck. But as we have our first table reset, if you're enjoying what you're seeing, make sure to leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the action in the PokeType League TCG as we get into game 2. And we have the Raiders going first here with their laser focus deck. We can see the Klefki in hand as well as the Mawile. They've got the Lairon and the Aggron that they cannot put into play, as they are evolutions of Aron. The Turrfield Ebonies with their Ruins of Abundance that can only play the Boon Suite, but they've got the Steenie and the Serena in hand as well, plus the Rare Candy that they can capitalize on and just jump straight over the Steenie. As the second Mawile has been pulled for the Raiders, they are going to get a Poison Barb onto the Klefki. They can't get that single energy onto the Klefki just yet, but with that unlock, it does 10 damage and allows them to draw a card from their deck, as the Ebonies have just pulled the Execute, moving that immediately onto the bench, and they are going to play the Guzma, ensuring that that Poison Barb is immediately discarded off of the Klefki here. Boon Suite only requiring 1 energy for that flop that does 10 damage. A fantastic name for a move, because that flop onto Klefki, leaving it with only 60 health remaining, and Boon Suite only has 60 health itself, as the Rare Candy has been pulled for the Raiders. They do get that single energy for the unlock onto the Klefki, 10 damage back towards Boon Suite here from Klefki, and they draw the Sophocles, as there are those Togedemaru's inside the deck of the Olivine Raiders. The Tapu Bulu being pulled for the Ebonies does require 3 energy, but they immediately get that onto the bench. They've got the Steenie here, they've got the Serena, they both only require 1 energy, and there's already an energy on Boon Sweet, so they go with the rare candy. Serena coming online, the 3-kick combo. They get to flip 3 coins, and for every heads, it does 50 damage here. They need 2 to wipe Klefki off the board. They get a Tails. 2 Tails, 3 Tails, 0 damage here from the Serena with the 3-kick combo. Klefki ducking and weaving and dodging out of the way of those moves, as it is Laron being pulled from the deck here. Still no Aron in hand just yet, but they do get an energy onto the Morwell, who does require 2, and again another unlock. This is continuing to thin that deck of the laser focus from the Raiders, getting another Sophocles in hand. The Ebonies get their second Steenie in hand, which is no use to them at the moment, so they're starting to set up the Tapu Bulu, who does require 3 energy. Another 3-kick combo. Tails, 3 Tails again from this Serena. This is not good for the Ebonies. This is fantastic for the Raiders though. This is buying them all the time they need, because they have just pulled that Togedemaru, who can be an absolute menace with those bristling spikes. They do require 2 energy, as it does just receive its first, and another unlock from the Klefki. Very intelligently here, the Raiders taking their time, capitalizing on the Ebonies flipping tails, and they get the Aron, as it's the Alolan Executor for the Turrfield Ebonies, immediately being moved online, and it does also require 3 energy for that Tropical Hammer, but it's also a coin flip, and they're not having much success with the coin flips here. Another Tails, and they finally get a heads. They finally get 50 damage out of 9 coin flips so far. That Serena has flipped a single heads, as the Raiders have just pulled the rare candy. No wonder they chose to put an energy onto the Tapu Bulu instead of the Alolan Executor, as Aron takes the final bench slot for the Olivine Raiders. Raiders deciding to move that metal energy onto the Togedemaru, who doesn't require any more, and they're going to retreat the Klefki. They don't want to drop a single point here. They're going to play the Sophocles as well. This allows Togedemaru to do an additional 30 damage, so it will do 60 damage to the Serena. But now if Serena is able to land a hit on the Togedemaru, it will take 30 recoil damage thanks to those bristling spikes, as the Poison Barb has been pulled for the Turrfield Ebonies, and they are going to get a second energy onto the Alolan Executor here. So Serena needs to land 2 of these 3-kick combos if the Ebonies are hoping to take the first point here in game 2. Moment of truth. They get 1 heads. They get a Tails. They get a heads, and they will discard Togedemaru from the active spot into the discard pile. There's 30 damage back onto the Serena, which does actually activate the Poison Barb. That's very interesting to see, but that's not really going to matter, because Togedemaru is off the board. The Ebony is taking 0.1, and we already have that time one because that was taking so long for it to play out. The Raiders need to make a quick choice. They are running out of time, and they quickly decide to go with the Morwell in the active spot. It still requires 1 more energy, but does 30 damage. Serena only has 10 health remaining, and they're going to play the rare candy as well, which means that Aggron is going to come online. It does require 4 energy for the Giga Impact, but 150 damage. A Alolan Executor cannot even outlast that hit. But in the meantime, they can't start setting up the aggro, and they have to get the second energy onto the Morwell for this powerful Vice. And with that, it is an easy discard and an easy point for the Raiders. They get to go for the coin flip. It is a Tails, otherwise it would have paralyzed the Serena, but they're not concerned with that. They're concerned with taking that point, as Morwell has become poisoned thanks to that Poison Barb. Even playing field here between the two sides. The Ebony's deciding to go with the Tapu Bulu. They don't want any more coin flips for the damage that they will give out. However, that stuck in tackle, it does 100. It can do 20 damage to itself if they flip a Tails. And they do get that Boon Sweet. They just pulled onto the bench, and they have flipped the Tails, so there will be 20 damage Tapu Bulu doing to itself, but it's able to wipe them all off the board, and the Ebonies are 1 point away from taking game 2. They don't want to lose this series in the first 2 games. The Raiders, though, are still in this. They are going to move the Aggron into the active spot. Again, though, it does take 4 energy to set up, as the Aron has been pulled for the Raiders. Once again, they move it onto the bench here. They are going to get a first energy onto the Aggron. I'm sure the Ebonies are very happy they haven't moved that Executor into the active spot at risk of flipping their tails. It's another Serena being pulled for the Ebonies. They move the Steenie with the Leaf Step onto the bench, and they do get a third energy onto the Executor, but another stuck in tackle. They need to flip the heads, and they do, so there will be no damage onto the Tapu Bulu on this occasion, but 100 damage onto the Aggron, who has 60 health remaining. The Togedemaru has been pulled for the Raiders, but Aggron has a 4 energy retreat cost, not just to get online with that Giga Impact, to get back to the bench. This is not looking good for the Raiders. This is fantastic for the Ebonies. They do get an energy onto the Aggron, but there is not much else they can do. So they send it over to the Ebonies, who pull the Leaf Cape, but that's not their concern. Their concern is this stuck in tackle. They just want to avoid the 20 damage to themselves, and they are unsuccessful. It is the tail, so Tapu Bulu does 20 damage to itself, but it wipes Aggron off the board, and the Ruins of Abundance deck does take game 2 as we have our final table reset. And here we go, it is game 3 to determine the overall series winner and who will leave this matchup with 4 points in the win column. It is going to be that Ultra Wormhole deck for the Raiders going first. They've got the Stack Attacker, they've also got the Meltan and the Necrozma in hand. The Stack Attacker deck going in the active spot, the other two on the bench for the Ebonies. It's the Lush Jungle deck. They've got 2 of the Fomantis plus the Wimpod. We can see the Guzma and the Leftovers also in hand. It's the Pokeball and the Beastite in hand for the Raiders, as it is the Fomantis in the active spot, Wimpod on the bench. But here we go, our game 3 decider, and it is the Raiders going first, pulling the Lusamine. That Pokeball will allow them to get a basic Pokemon from their deck, and it is the second Stack Attacker. And if you're wondering why it's different, they are also permitted to draft cards not just from the A3 sets, but from the promo set A in Season A3 of the PokeType League TCG. As the Ebonies pull the Wimpod, they get their first energy onto the Fomantis, and another Leafage coming into play in this series, 20 damage onto the Stack Attacker. They have just pulled the XP do the Raiders. Now, Stack Attacker does require 2 energy to get that Brass Rock online. It does do 40 damage, but it also takes 20 less damage in the incoming turn after using that, as the Ebonies have just pulled the Shinotic. No more LOL in hand just yet. They are thinking about how they want to approach this. Now, Wimpod does require 3 energy for that Gnaw that does 30 damage. A lot of setup for not much damage here, as the Leafage from Fomantis continuing to chip away at the Stack Attacker. Now, one Stack Attacker can go for this Brass Rock. Fomantis won't be able to do any damage to it. It is the Melmetal being pulled for the Raiders, that Mega Punch doing 90 damage, whereas it is the Black Metal from Necrozma. It does 100, but it also has to discard an energy in the process, as there it is, that Brass Rock, 40 damage onto the Fomantis. The Poison Bar being pulled by the Ebonies. Now, if they go on the offensive, it's not going to do any damage regardless to the Stack Attacker, so they are just going to get that Poison Barb onto the Fomantis here. They get a second energy onto the Wimpod. They also get a second Wimpod onto the bench. Now, the Ebonies still trying for that Leafage. 0 damage though to the Stack Attacker, and it comes back over to the Raiders here. They pull the big Malasada. Now, this is fantastic for them, because once they do damage to that Fomantis, the Stack Attacker will be left with that poison status condition, but the big Malasada can cure it of that, as well as healing 10 damage, and there it is, that poisoning coming into play here. But it's the first point being taken by this Ultra Wormhole deck for the Olivine Raiders. Almost said the Opelucid Frontiers, which is the team the Olivine Raiders will be playing next round, and I cannot wait for those two sides to collide for the first time. As the Wimpod now in the active spot, going for the Gnaw, it does do 10 damage, because again, that damage is reduced by 20. Raiders have just pulled the Guzma here, but there are no Pokemon tools on the side of the Ebonies, but they are going to play the big Malasada, so now Stack Attacker does not have to worry about that poisoning being cured here, and they get a second energy on to the Melmetal. They've got the Lusamine in hand, so it's very smart that they're not worrying too much about setting up the Necrozma, because if Stack Attacker does get discarded, those energies will also go into the discard pile, and the Lusamine can pull them back out and put them onto an Ultra Beast being the Necrozma. And there it is, another Brass Rock, and Wimpod left with 30 health, as the Molol has been pulled for the Ebonies. They've got 2 Shinotic in hand, and they are going to go with another Gnaw, another 10 damage, just chipping away ever so slightly at the Stack Attacker here. And the Raiders do pull the Meltan. they can get a third energy that is needed onto the Melmetal. That's exactly what they're going to do. They've also got that Beastite in hand that they've had since the very beginning, and it does more damage, 10 more damage when it's attached to an Ultra Beast for every point that team has taken. As it is the Melmetal being moved into the active spot, they've actually retreated the Stack Attacker. They don't want to drop any points. It is that Mega Punch, 90 damage. And they are taking their time. They don't want to make any rushed decisions. And there it is, the Mega Punch onto the Wimpod. And that is a second point here for the Olivine Raiders. They're trying to take game 3 without dropping a single point to the Lush Jungle deck. And that is the Morlow being moved into the active spot. The Shiinotic does have 100 health, as the Golisopod has also been pulled for the Turrfield Ebonies here. They are going to get the Golisopod online. For that first impression, it does require 3 energy, but the Shiinotic being moved with that flickering light, getting its second energy, 50 damage, and it can prevent the opposing Pokemon from being able to go on the offensive in the next turn, but they need to flip their heads here. And they're successful. They are going to buy themselves a bit of time as they try to get the next 3 points in this matchup. The Beast Wall being pulled for the Olivine Raiders, another item that can be used on an Ultra Beast, and it can only be played when the opposing side has not taken any points here. And the Raiders thinking about how they want to approach this now. They can't play the Lucamine because there's no Ultra Beast that was discarded either. Stack Attacker is still in play, so they're going to start setting up Necrozma the traditional way, getting its first energy here. They're still going through their hand. They can't go for this Mega Punch right now, otherwise they may have been opting to try and retreat the Melmetal, but it is a 3 energy retreat cost for the Melmetal as well, and they don't have an X-Speed in hand, so they do end their turn. It comes back over to the Ebonies, who do pull the Lurantis. They've got the Fermentus in their hand, and they do get a first energy onto the Golisopod, but they're going to try for another Flickering Light, it seems. But not before they get that Fermentus onto the bench. And here it is, the Flickering Light, another 50 damage onto the Melmetal, bringing it down to only 40 health. And again, they flip the heads. Melmetal unable to go on the offensive with that Mega Punch. The Professor's Research being pulled by the Olivine Raiders. They play that immediately, drawing another 2 cards. They get the Pokeball, they get the Poison Barb, that Pokemon tool we see quite regularly in Season 3, a big part of the meta in this season. The Pokeball also being played, so they're guaranteed another basic Pokemon in hand, being the second Duskmane Necrozma. And they do have all their basic Pokemon in hand, getting the Necrozma onto the bench. It's going to get its first energy as well. They're not going to try and get a second energy onto the Necrozma. They must know what's ahead of them for this Melmetal, because it cannot go on the offensive. It is left in the active spot. The Ebonies have an opportunity to capitalize. They've just pulled the Pokeball as well. They can guarantee a basic Pokemon from their deck, but not before they get the Lurantis online, who has that Petal Blizzard. And here it is, the Pokeball. And there's the Morlow being pulled for the Turrfield Ebonies. They've got the second Shiinotic in hand already. Second energy onto the Golisopod, and the Guzma is being played. They don't want that poisoning onto the Shiinotic either. And here it is, the Flickering Light. The Ebonies with this Lush Jungle deck have finally taken a point in Game 3, going for another coin flip. They actually get another heads as well, but Melmetal is discarded, so it doesn't matter that it can't attack, because we already knew that was the case. And here it is, the Raiders needing to decide. They move the Necrozma into the active spot. They've just pulled the Repel here, and they are going to play that Lucamine. And there's the 2 energy onto the Necrozma. They are going to play the Beastite as well. This will allow it to do 120 damage, and Shiinotic only has 100 health, and this is going to allow the Raiders to take Game 3 over the Turrfield Ebonies. They held on strong until the very and in fantastic form, and this moves them all the way up to second place. But as we said, next round they are going up against the Opaloosa Frontiers, who are in third place. I cannot wait for that game. Whereas for the Ebonies, they will be going up against the Kitakami Rogues. But until then, Nidorinos, thank you so much for watching. Let us know in the comments below what cards you pulled today, and if you enjoyed what you saw, please leave a like, share, subscribe, but more importantly, always remember, send thanks, and I will see you when you see me.